Hey everybody, Kowalski here, checking out hashtag Star Trek Discovery Discussions videos. Today, of course, we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 11, The Citadel / Su'Kal. Woo boy. Okay, so this is one of those episodes where, you guys are going to hate me for because I didn't like this episode. But all right, let's get into it. So, for those of you that don't already know, this episode was originally entitled The Citadel. I guess they decided to change it based off of, I don't know, some kind of criteria. Obviously, the Citadel did have a purpose within this episode, but they went ahead and called it Su'Kal, which is the name of the Kelpian survivor, the child survivor from the Kelpian ship that crash landed on this mysterious planet that's surrounded by this super dangerous cloud, which is more dangerous than the Briar Patch, apparently. And it's just crazy, crazy cloud, and so they decided to name it that way. This episode was the quintessential Discovery episode, which is that the only thing, once again, holding these episodes and this show back is these convoluted plots and this kind of just terrible writing. The writing has been consistently the Achilles heel of Star Trek Discovery and, in some regards, Star Trek Picard. But mostly Star Trek Discovery, it has been the Achilles heel of the show, and it continues to hold it back. This season did okay. So far it's been really good, and we've gotten a lot of really great moments. And in this episode, we had a lot of really interesting moments, but ultimately some really, really convoluted things that took me right out of it, and things that just so happened to work out a certain way so that it would just fit the plot because that's what was written there, and some just kind of obvious bonehead things that just fell flat for me. Ultimately, I'm not satisfied with this episode. Obviously, we had the big reveal of this episode, which is that we now know what caused the burn, or at least we know about probably 85% of what caused the burn. We'll probably get more of that either in the next episode or in the finale itself. But it ultimately didn't really connect right, and it ultimately doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But yeah, so let's just jump into that. Let's talk about the burn first, before I get into my ranting and raving about the characterization of some of our folks in this episode. The burn supposedly is caused by Su'Kal, who is the Kelpian surviving child on this planet, which is primarily made out of dilithium. According to Dr. Culber, he's theorizing that when he was in utero, his cells and all these, different things that were building, his building blocks of life, we'll say, his DNA, that's Mr. DNA, got manipulated by the surrounding environment, and now he has some kind of capability that damages dilithium crystals and sends out this shockwave that almost destroys the Discovery and Osyrra's ship that shows up later on. And the theory is that him screaming is what's causing the shockwave, because this mimic monster from Edge of Tomorrow is there scaring him into, frighteningness. My issue with this is it's technobabble, it's bullshit, it's whatever. I don't really care about that. This is Star Trek. To complain about technobabble now would be ridiculous. It's part of Star Trek. I'm fine with the technobabble. And ultimately, I like the idea that it was this innocent being that accidentally caused this massive problem. I like that. In fact, way earlier on in this season, I theorized quite heavily that I would like it to be this innocuous thing that caused it, whether it was like a first contact attempt or it was something that wasn't malicious. It was just something that happened because of some other action. And there it is. It's this young, Kelpian that accidentally, this childlike Kelpian, I should say, that accidentally caused the burn. I don't hate that idea. I think that's an interesting idea to explore. The problem that I have with it is that they show this guy, Su'Kal, the whole episode. He's terrified of everything. He's terrified of his own shadow. He's nervous. He's freaking out. He doesn't like them being there. The whole thing is him being scared. So you're trying to tell me that my man hasn't screamed, even with this giant mimic monster there, which I guess they're saying that he's barricaded it since the original burn. But I don't know. The idea that my man hasn't screamed for over 100 years, which could have caused another burn, I find that to be hard to believe, because literally the entire episode, he's scared of everything. He's scared of everything, including when he thinks Burnham is a program. He gets very nervous and very anxious and starts to freak out a little bit. So he's like this very scared little, child mentality. And you're telling me he hasn't screamed again for 100 years? I just don't buy that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The idea that he's trapped the mimic monster in that little dungeon space for over 100 years and it's never ever come out. I just don't buy that either. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Ultimately it's just weird. Like the what they're trying to get across here is just weird, but hopefully they explain more of this either in the next episode or the finale, and we understand a little bit more about how the burn happens, and he has this ability to scream and impact, different things. He has this X-Man superhuman ability. I don't know, but as of right now, it's really, really just not believable and kind of stupid. It's kind of stupid the way that they're trying to get us to believe that that's how it happens, is that when he gets super frightened, he just screams really loud and it shatters the universe. And it only happened one time 100-something years ago. That part is like unbelievably stupid, and I just don't buy that right now. Hopefully we'll get more of an explanation, but as of right now, that's just, it's not flying for me. So another thing that kind of bugged me a bit in this episode, and this again has to do with the writing. The writing here is really what's making this episode suffer, is the now complete 180 on the Burnham character. We have spent the majority of this season with Burnham struggling to readapt herself back to the Starfleet lifestyle. And several points throughout this season, she has struggled to do that, with going so far as being demoted from being first officer because she went off script and, went on a rogue mission and went AWOL, and that she continues to rebuck Saru. She continues to rebuck Vance, the Dadmiral, and she's always kind of pushing things and kind of doing what she wants to do in order to get the thing done. And yes, she seems to be always right, but that's kind of her character, and we can get into that conversation later. But she's been constantly being, struggling to kind of reconnect. She approached that with her mom again, when they had the whole situation with Navarre. And then they rolled right into this situation with Georgiou, who had a 5-second conversation with her before she went through the Guardian of Forever, last week, where she said, "Michael, you're better than this. You're meant for so much more," whatever it was. And then now this episode, it's like that was it. Like now she's flipped over and she's ready to get back to being the Michael Burnham that we had from seasons 1 and 2. It seems almost bizarrely 180, which is frustrating because they were really building up to her earning back that, that title of being an officer. And in this episode, she just immediately starts acting like that again. So it was really bizarre that they didn't pay themselves off because they spent so long building up to that. And then in order to really drive home the point that she's gone back to the stoic, responsible Starfleet officer, they then flip Saru around suddenly, where he's the emotional kind of risk taker and maybe really bad, which I find really annoying for two reasons, which is that it makes Saru look foolish, and it's completely unearned why he suddenly is acting like way out of pocket because of this one Kelpian child, even though Kaminar is still a planet where Kelpians still live. It's not like his species is completely extinct and it's just him and this other person. There is a planet filled with other Kelpians, so I don't know why he's freaking out about this one kid, but whatever. But also, kind of like layered on top of all that, it's this idea that when Michael wants to, do what she wants to do and let emotions kind of cloud her judgment and, and kind of just focus on what she wants to do. Number one, she's always right. She's always successful when she's got to do. For the most part, she's successful when she needs to do. And yes, sometimes there are repercussions, like, her getting demoted or whatever, but ultimately the goal that she had in mind was accurate and she was successful, and that's totally fine with her. But the one time where Saru makes like a slightly weird judgment call about trying to push through the clouding field thing that's damaging the Discovery, which wasn't even damaging the Discovery, it was just dropping their shields at that point. Now she's like, I don't know if he can be objectionable. I don't know if he can make the hard call. What are you talking about? Make what hard call? What is going on? It is so bizarre that now they've flipped it around so that, and really in order to drive home that Michael Burnham is back to being a, appropriate Starfleet officer. Now Saru's acting like literally the way Michael was just 2 episodes ago. So this is very strange, and why they're flipping this around, and where does she even get off with coming down on him for, feeling a little bit of emotion attachment to what's going on? And you could get into the argument that, well, she's not the first officer anymore. she's not the captain. The captain has to put themselves above that. Well, he made her the first officer, and she should have put herself above that, but she didn't. Consistently. She consistently didn't put herself above the mission and above the needs of the crew. She continued to do what she wanted and felt fully justified with that and feels fine. She doesn't feel anything about that. But the moment Saru's like, I gotta do this one thing, it's like kind of weird. And she's like, you're compromised. You're compromised. So she says to him on the planet at the end, she's like, you're compromised. You're compromised? I'm sorry. Like, this is Bush League trash writing. I'm sorry. It's not good. This was a terrible way to showcase Saru kind of having an emotional connection to Su'Kal, and a terrible way to end this season-long plot arc of Michael Burnham reconnecting back to her Starfleet Federation roots. This was a terrible way to do that. Okay, so now that I'm done kind of ranting and raving, I guess, let's talk about some of the other things that happened in this episode. Ultimately, the whole Tilly versus Osyrra thing was whatever, you know. I mean, to get upset about her beaming in through the shields or whatever when they went to Black Alert, I mean, that's such a thing in Star Trek nowadays, you know. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes you can beam through shields. Sometimes it's a big, huge plot point. It really doesn't matter to me. If you're getting that upset about it, then you don't watch enough Star Trek to realize that literally, they do that all the time. Not a big deal. It's whatever. I think the only thing that was really kind of glaring in that moment is that it literally showcases the concerns I raised several weeks ago, which is that Tilly is woefully inadequate and unprepared to manage a crisis, because all she did was have some snarky words and then immediately gets taken over, and she didn't do anything. You know, she was just like, I'll blow this ship up. And it's like, well, you jumped right to self-destruction pretty quickly. And she immediately called your bluff on that, by the way, because you didn't. And you didn't even start the countdown, which I thought was weird. And yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You know, I think that the Osyrra taking over the Discovery plot is interesting, but now I'm curious as to what they're gonna do. I mean, are they just gonna try to use it to attack Federation headquarters? Are they gonna use it to attack Federation fleets? Are they gonna use it as a bargaining chip to get the Federation to surrender? I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. Are people gonna potentially get tortured or die? I don't know. You know, there's definitely some interesting things going on there now that she has taken over the Discovery. Clearly, they're going to get it back. I mean, it was obvious that she was going to show up at some point based off of how crazy they talked about it in the previous episode, and then they talked a little bit about it again at the beginning of this one, so it's clear that they were going to do that. But now it's kind of like a little bit of a mystery here. What is Osyrra's real plan? What is really Osyrra doing? I would like it so that maybe it flips it around, you know, and maybe she's not as bad of a person as we're led to believe. Maybe, you know, she's done some tough stuff. We've seen her kind of do some mean stuff, you know, before, but maybe she's just trying to do her thing, you know, and trying to actually survive out there and actually provide for her people, and which requires an iron fist. And maybe there's going to be some kind of redemption arc there. That would be kind of fun. You know, maybe make her a little bit more, you know, more than one-dimensional mustache twirling. Although I do like a mustache twirling villain. I don't hate a mustache twirling villain. So we'll see what happens there, though. I'm very excited about that. That should be really fun. But we are getting down to the wire. You know, this is the next episode, and then we have the finale. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's going to be kind of interesting to kind of see how they wrap this season up and then tee it off for season 4, which is filming. So they could leave us on a bit of a cliffhanger, or even provide us with a great teaser for what's coming up next. That would be interesting. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what's going on there. A couple other things that I really enjoyed was I liked when they beamed down to the planet and everybody looked a little bit different. Obviously, seeing Doug Jones without the Saru makeup was fantastic, and I absolutely did love that. I thought that was great. I wish we could see more of that. We should have him playing 2 characters on the show, quite frankly. Human Doug Jones and Saru. I would like that. I liked Culber with the Bajoran makeup there. I thought that was really fun. You know, Michael playing as the Trill. Really fun. I liked the sequence where she was pretending to be the hologram to talk to Su'Kal, because that was kind of like a really great way for her using her science background to try to reconnect with Su'Kal and kind of bring him back to reality. I thought that was a smart thing. They haven't really touched on her science capabilities really in quite a while, so it's great that they actually decided to tie that back in and do all that fun stuff. So that was really great. But yeah, I mean, ultimately the episode was just, it was a bit of a letdown. I don't know how I really feel about it. Obviously, I was kind of ranting and raving quite a bit at the beginning of this video, of this review video, because there's 2 big things there that really bug me, and I'm hoping that they clean it up and it makes more sense, but they only have 2 more episodes to really clean this thing up and make it make more sense, and I just don't think they're going to do that in enough time. So We'll see what happens, though. But anyways, guys and gals, that does wrap up my kind of review slash discussion for today's episode. I am, of course, curious as to what you guys thought about it. I'm sure you're going to be really mad about the way that I kind of ripped apart this episode, but hopefully we can keep the comments and the discussion rather clean and rather respectful, and we can kind of keep the, cohesion together there. This is what the Kepwalski YouTube channel is known for. But if you did enjoy this video or you enjoy our discussions in general, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It kind of helps us out over here and allows you to stay up to date with all the latest Star Trek news, reviews, and all that jazz for the Star Trek universe. And I look forward to getting the conversation started. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!